He wasn't staring at her body. He was staring at the scar. The wind coming off the ocean was sharp that evening, carrying the scent of salt and something like second chances. Daniel Harper stood barefoot in the sand, one hand shielding his eyes from the sinking sun, the other gripping a small plastic shovel that belonged to his 6-year-old daughter. That's when he heard it. "Eyes are up here." The voice was firm, defensive, tired. Daniel blinked and quickly looked up. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed over her swimsuit cover-up, chin slightly lifted like she'd said those words 1,000 times before. Her dark hair whipped around her face in the wind, and her eyes, guarded, stormy, locked onto his. "I'm sorry," Daniel said immediately. "I wasn't. You don't have to explain." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "I know how it goes." He hesitated. Then, gently, he said, "I was looking at your shoulder." That caught her off guard. Her expression shifted, just slightly. There, along her collarbone and stretching down her upper arm, was a long, jagged scar. Not the kind from a minor accident. The kind that tells a story no one wants to relive. "I wasn't staring," Daniel added quietly. "I just recognized it." She studied him, suspicion flickering. Recognized it. Before he could answer, a small voice piped up behind him. "Daddy, look, I made a mermaid castle." Daniel turned, his face softening instantly. "That's amazing, Sophie." The little girl beamed, sand covering her knees, curls bouncing as she ran back to her masterpiece. When Daniel looked back at the woman, something had changed in her eyes. The edge had dulled. "You're a dad," she said, almost to herself. "Single dad," he replied. There was a pause. The waves crashed rhythmically, like the ocean was waiting too. "I'm Elena," she said finally. Daniel. They were neighbors. He'd moved into the small beachside duplex 3 months ago, desperate for a fresh start after losing his wife to a sudden illness. He'd noticed the woman next door only in passing, always quick hellos, polite nods, nothing more. He hadn't known about the scar. He hadn't known about her. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable," Daniel said. "That wasn't my intention." Elena looked at the horizon. "Most men don't even bother pretending." He swallowed. "I'm not most men." That night, after Sophie fell asleep clutching a seashell she'd insisted was magic, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about the look in Elena's eyes. It wasn't anger. It was exhaustion. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more often. At the mailbox. In the driveway. On the beach where Sophie insisted on building a new kingdom every evening. At first, Elena kept her distance. Short answers. Guarded smiles. But Sophie was relentless in the way only children can be. "Miss Elena, you should see my sparkly rock collection. Miss Elena, do you know how to braid hair? Miss Elena, Daddy burns pancakes. Can you teach him not to?" Daniel would flush in embarrassment. Elena would try, and fail, to hide her smile. One evening, Sophie tripped chasing a seagull and scraped her knee badly. Daniel scooped her up, but before he could carry her home, Elena was already kneeling in the sand, pulling a small first aid kit from her beach bag. "You carry that around?" Daniel asked. "Old habit," she said softly. Her hands were steady, gentle, too practiced. That's when he saw it, the faint scars along her wrist. And suddenly, he understood. Weeks later, the truth came out in pieces. They were sitting on the porch after Sophie had fallen asleep. The air was warm, the sky bruised purple with twilight. "I was married," Elena said quietly. Daniel didn't interrupt. He wasn't always cruel. That's the part people don't understand. Monsters don't look like monsters at first. Her fingers traced the scar on her shoulder. It started small. Comments. Control. Isolation. She laughed bitterly. Then one night he decided I'd embarrassed him at a work event. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He pushed me into a glass table. I needed 40 stitches. She paused. "I stayed another year." "Why?" The word slipped out before he could stop it. She didn't seem offended. "Because I thought love meant enduring." Silence settled between them, heavy but honest. Daniel looked down at his wedding ring, still hanging on a chain around his neck. "My wife died 2 years ago," he said. "Cancer. Fast. Aggressive. One day we were planning Sophie's birthday party. 3 months later I was planning a funeral." Elena's eyes softened. "I don't know how to do this alone," he admitted. "I'm terrified every day. That I'm not enough. That I'll mess her up." Elena's voice was steady. "The fact that you worry about that means you won't." Their friendship deepened after that. But not without challenges. The neighborhood whispered. A single father and a divorced woman with visible scars spending time together. People talk. One afternoon, Daniel overheard a group of women at the beach. "Poor kid," one muttered. "First her mom dies, now her dad's chasing the neighbor." Daniel's fists clenched. That night, he pulled back. Fewer porch conversations. Shorter exchanges. He didn't want Sophie caught in gossip. Elena noticed. You're retreating, she said one evening. I have to think about my daughter. And what are you teaching her? Elena asked gently. That kindness should be hidden because people talk. That hit harder than he expected. The real test came when Elena's ex showed up. It was a Saturday morning. Sophie was drawing with chalk in the driveway when a black SUV rolled to a stop. Elena froze. Daniel saw the color drain from her face. A tall man stepped out, expensive sunglasses, smug smile. Elena, he said smoothly. You look different. Daniel moved instinctively closer. I told you not to come here, Elena said, her voice trembling but firm. I just wanted to talk. His eyes flicked to Daniel. I see you've moved on quickly. Sophie looked confused. Daddy. Daniel knelt beside her. Go inside, sweetheart. Lock the door. For a moment, fear threatened to pull Elena back into old patterns. Daniel saw it, the instinct to shrink. Instead, she stepped forward. You don't get to intimidate me anymore, she said clearly. You don't get to rewrite what you did. The man scoffed. You're being dramatic. Daniel's voice was calm but unyielding. Leave, now, or I call the police. There was something in Daniel's stance, protective but not possessive, that made the man hesitate. After a tense second, he got back into the SUV and drove off. Elena's legs gave out. Daniel caught her. For the first time, she cried in front of him. I thought I was past this, she whispered. You are, he said. Healing isn't linear. In the weeks that followed, Elena filed a restraining order. Daniel attended every court date, sitting quietly behind her, not as a savior, but as support. Sophie drew a picture one day of the three of them standing on the beach. This is our team, she declared proudly. Daniel and Elena exchanged a look. Not rushed, not desperate, earned. Months later, on that same stretch of sand where they'd first spoken, Elena stood watching Sophie chase waves. You know, she said, when I told you, eyes are up here, I assumed you were like every other man. Daniel smiled softly. And I assumed you hated me. She laughed. You were staring at my scar. I was, he admitted. But not because it was ugly. She tilted her head. Because it meant you survived. Her breath caught. For years, she'd seen that scar as proof of shame, weakness, poor choices. No one had ever called it survival. She reached for his hand. I'm not fragile, she said. I know, he replied. And I'm not trying to fix you. I don't need fixing. Good, he smiled. Because I just need you. The sun dipped low, painting the ocean gold. Sophie ran toward them, laughing. Group hug. They wrapped their arms around each other, wind tangling hair, waves crashing applause at their feet. Life hadn't been gentle with either of them. He had faced the emptiness of loss. She had faced the terror of love turned violent. But together, they learned something neither had understood before. Love isn't about saving someone. It's about standing beside them while they save themselves. And sometimes, when someone says, eyes are up here, what they're really asking is, see me, not my scars, not my past, me. Daniel did. And that made all the difference.